Hello, everybody. My name is Zerduku, and this is my bookmaster Akari trying to read out Vengeful Spirit. And don't worry, guys. This chapter is a whole lot less um, rapey.
Graphic.
There we go. Graphic, maybe, but less rapey. Alrighty, continue on.
Basically, he's trying to say there's not going to be any sexual abuse, right?
Not in chapter 3.
Okay then. Chapter 3 Milo's Transformation. One glorious afternoon when the hell rings in the school of Turtletown. Oh, the bell rings in the school of Turtletown. 6 years have passed, and nobody remembers the tragic death of Milo. The myth of the boy has plagued the town for years. Al- Albeit quite a myth, quiet myth, something like that. Okay. Some kids and townspeople have had memories of children's voices, much like Milo's used to sound, down by the riverbanks on the edge of town. After the bell rings, dozens of children go outside and play in the playground, where they have fun playing games with each other. Two little girls run off towards the pavilion that is off to the side of the playground to see a friend of theirs. Once they make their way into the pavilion, they see a young African American boy sitting in his wheelchair reading a math book. The boy's name is Angus Poe, and he wasn't born with the capability of walking, so he is stuck in that wheelchair from birth. However, the two little girls liked him as a friend and often go to talk to him every time the bell rings for recess. "Hello, Angus," said the African American girl with ponytails. She has a very cute face and wears an adorable hat with a teddy bear face on it. Aww.
Also,
"Hello, Emily," Angus responded, not paying attention to the two girls still reading his book. "We were wondering if you wanted to play tag with us," said the red-headed girl standing next to Emily. Angus looked up at her and pushed up his glasses with a very serious face. "Does it look like I can play tag with you, Sam?" Angus responded with sarcasm. "Well, what if we pushed you?" Sam responded. "Illogical," Angus responded as he goes back to reading. "Oh, Angus, you do not know how to have fun," Sam responded with an attitude. "Come on, Sam. We can play just the two of us," Emily said as she puts her hand on Sam's shoulder with a cute and adorable smile. After Sam turns her head towards Emily and nods her head yes, they start to play tag out in the playground outside the pavilion. As Emily and Sam were playing, Emily's eyes catch something beyond the fence that is boarded around the playground to keep children inside. Just beyond the fence is a water tower that's part of the water factory next to the school. What catches her eye stops her in her tracks. She sees a boy wearing a yellow raincoat. The reason why she stopped, there's something about this boy that was scary to her. Emily did not notice that the boy's skin was gray and his eyes were glowing red. Another thing that Emily did not notice is that the boy was constantly dripping water, even though it hasn't rained for the past 3 days. Out of fear and curiosity, Emily takes a deep breath and a large gulp of air, slowly walks towards the boy. What? Why? If you're scared of something, don't walk towards it. Jeez. Halfway there, she blinks and the boy was gone as if he never existed. Emily stops immediately, rubs her eyes, and looks again for the boy. Not seeing him, she starts to breathe heavily with a panic of cold sweat rushing over her. Emily jumps when her friend Sam tapped her on the shoulder. "Emily, are you okay?" asked Sam. Emily did not immediately answer, looking back to where the boy was standing. She still didn't see him there. "It's nothing, Sam," Emily responded as both little girls go back to playing. Meanwhile, The kids were playing in the playground. All the teachers that were supposed to be watching the kids were standing behind a big white trailer together, talking at the same time, smoking weed. Great. Thanks for not looking after the kids.
I actually kind of like this scene. Continue on.
I don't know why we have to watch these kids since they can take care of themselves, said the gym teacher, Mr. B, who was a muscular old man wearing a red hat. Yes, I know. Nowadays, parents cannot be parents and depend on a complete strangers in a school to watch the children. That's your fucking job! The kids are going to school to be educated. Your job is to not only educate them, but make sure that they stay safe.
You're kind of clearly missing the point, but that's okay.
Whatever happened to the old days where parents were parents? Said the English teacher, Mrs. Hartz, who is a slightly older lady who looked like she was in her mid 40s but wasn't. Oh? Eventually, the principal joins them and begins to speak. The one thing that many people do not realize is children are much smarter than most people give them credit for, which makes our job completely pointless. Since Principal Martin, wearing a blue shirt and a red tie, and he looked younger than the other teachers, in his mid-20s, but he wasn't. Yeah, well, at least we get paid. However, I wish there was a point to my job, though, other than money, says the gym teacher. Mrs. Hartz takes a deep inhale from the weed she was smoking, and then she begins to cough. Are you okay, Mrs. Hartz? Asked the principal. Yes, I'm fine, Mrs. Hartz quickly responded. Don't mind her, she's trying to get really high because the children in her classroom can be hard to tame sometimes, explained the gym teacher. Hey! Not everybody has a deep, strong, threatening, deep voice like you, shouted Mrs. Hartz with a small hint of anger. It's okay, Mrs. Hartz. Children may be smart, but they can also be little imps sometimes, said the principal with a smile. Wow. Just wow.
I think I killed my bookmaster's brain.
Well, anyways, recess is over for the children, so I better take them in, said Mrs. Hartz, after she calmed down and walked away, dropping the joint on the ground and stepping on it to put it out. Hours later, Mr. B, the gym teacher, was putting the gym supplies like basketballs and soccer balls in the storage closet so he can leave and go home. When he puts the cart full of balls into the closet, he notices there is a puddle of water on the ground. Knowing that there are no drainage pipes around, he was curious and looked up to see where the water was coming from. He saw nothing on the ceiling to indicate that there was water dripping inside the storage closet. Ah!
You're okay.
Eventually, Mr. B shrugged it off as if it was nothing. So he walked out of the storage closet and locked the door. After he locked the door, he heard the sound of footsteps and the sound of the kids laughing. Who's there? Asked Mr. B with a slight fear in his voice as he turns around and puts the key in his pocket. The school is closed, shouted Mr. B. There was no response. It was dead silent in the gym room. Mr. B scratches his head in confusion. After Mr. B realizes that nobody was there, he made his way to the exit of the gym room. Before he could get to the door, in the corner of his eye, he sees somebody standing on the other side of the gym. He turned quickly and saw nobody there. Hello! Shouted Mr. B, looking around. Mr. B was confused and was completely certain that he saw somebody. Mr. B put his hands on his hips and releases a big exhale, trying to figure out what was happening, but he noticed that when he exhaled, he could see his own breath, which made no sense because it was spring and the temperature has been in the 80s lately, which means it's not cold enough for you to see your own breath. Mr. B did not want to stay another minute by himself in that gym room, so he left as fast as he could without running. The next day, during recess, it was raining and thundering. All the kids were to play inside. Mrs. Hartz was watching over the children inside of the recess room. Her student, Emily, was building something out of blocks until something caught her eye. Mrs. Hartz, looking at the exit that leads to the main hallway from the outside playground, sees a little boy in a yellow raincoat. The boy in the raincoat ran away out of sight. Emily got up and chased after the boy and snuck out of the playroom while Mrs. Hartz was not looking. Emily ran down the hallway and stopped and looked to the left, to the right, trying to find the boy in the yellow raincoat. First, she did not see anything, but then she heard the sound of footsteps going into the boys' bathroom. Not caring that she was a girl, she ran into the boys' bathroom anyways. Okay. Emily slowly walked into the boys' bathroom and she noticed that the lights were blinking, but eventually the lights stopped blinking, shining in her eyes brightly. She is able to see beneath the sink that the boy with the yellow raincoat sitting down on the floor, holding his knees to his face as if he was scared. Emily slowly approached the boy. "Are you okay?" asked Emily as she reaches her hand out to the boy. "Child, you should have just left him alone." I'm lost. I don't know where I am," the boy in the raincoat responded as it sounded like he was crying. "Can I see your face?" Emily asked as she tried to move the boy's hand, but Emily was scared when her hands phased through the boy. The boy in the raincoat responded by moving his knees and the hands out of the way and standing up and looking at Emily. "Oof. Well, now you get a good look at him." Emily stood up as well, looked into the boy's eyes. The boy in the yellow raincoat had black hair, his skin was pale white, and his eyes were glowing red. "Why are you so scary?" asked Emily. I don't know what you're talking about," the boy responded, shrugging his shoulders. Emily noticed that the water was dripping down from the boy's raincoat. "Were you in the thunderstorm?" asked Emily with politeness in her voice. "Yes, but," the boy responded, but eventually he was unable to continue talking because he forgot what he was going to say. "Do you know where your parents are?" asked Emily. "What are parents?" asked the boy with complete confusion. "My name is Emily," said Emily to the boy. I wish I could tell you what my name is, but I don't remember," said the boy in the yellow raincoat. Tears started to drip from the boy's eyes. "Don't cry," said Emily. "I'm sorry, but I'm lost, cold, and scared. I don't remember anything." Oh, this poor kid. "Don't be, because I want to be your friend, and as your friend, I promise that I'll figure out who you are so I can take you back to your parents," explained Emily. The boy nodded his head. "Since you cannot remember your name, how about I call you Dee Dee?" explained Emily. "Dee Dee? I like that name," said the boy. All of a sudden, the sound of a door slamming open make Emily jump, and she turns to see the principal. "What the hell are you doing in here?" shouted the principal to Emily. Emily was in complete shock and was unable to respond from the sound of the door slamming. The boy has already disappeared, and as a result, the principal did not see him. Since Emily did not respond, the principal took Emily back to the playroom. After that happened, from a far distance, on top of the water tower, the boy in the raincoat was looking down at the school. As he looks upon the school, the land looks familiar to him, but he still cannot remember. As it continues to storm outside, the boy in the yellow raincoat is able to see through the window of the school. He sees his new friend he made as she gets put back into the playroom. He notices that kids are having fun. Within his heart, He wishes to play with him. Something was holding him back. He could feel a natural gap between him and the other kids, but he did not understand why. What you feel is the fact that the living and the dead should not cross paths, said a
Malevolent.
thank you, voice behind the boy. Out of fear, the boy turns around to see a man wearing a dark cloak, holding a bronze staff with the crystal skull on top of it. The cloaked man has an orange metal mask on his face. He had bone-like wings engulfed in the turquoise flames, with a halo on his head also engulfed in flames. We already know what he looks like. This is Sudoku. It's the same damn dude.
I was making sure people knew who he was.
Who are you? Asked the boy, levitating in the air over the water tower. My name is Sudoku, Archangel of Death.
Archangel, but thank you.
I am here to take you to the light, said the Angel of Death. But I want to stay so I can figure out who I am. My friend Emily will tell me. She promised, said the boy. You must not know who you are. If you figure out who you are, you cannot go into the veil of light, explained the Angel of Death. I do not care. I want to know before I go, pleaded the boy. You will regret this. If you do not pass the veil of light now, then I fear that your fate will be covered in blood that will be sustained and cannot be wiped clean, said the Angel of Death. The boy did not respond, and after a loud bright flash of lightning, the Archangel of Death disappears. The next school day, Emily goes to see Angus at the library. She goes to sit down in front of Angus while he's reading a book of mathematics. Angus, I need your help, asked Emily. What is it that you want this time? Said Angus as he puts down the book and closes it. Can you please help me find anything about a boy who wears a yellow raincoat? Pleaded Emily. Angus looks at Emily with confusion. Why on earth would you want me to do that? Angus answered. Because I promised my friend Dee Dee that I'll help him figure out who he is. Emily explained. Who is Dee Dee? Asked Angus. He's a boy I met in the bathroom, explained Emily. Sorry, Emily, but I do not have any logical reason why I would help you. Why would I help you? Angus. What are you talking about? Emily responded. Because I find it illogical for somebody to not know who they are. Is this your imaginary friend? Because I do not believe in imaginary friends. Angus responded. It is not imaginary. He is real, said Emily, responded with a slight hint of frustration. Tell me, who is this Dee Dee? Asked Angus. He's a boy about my height, and he wears a yellow raincoat, and he has a scary, sad face. His eyes glow red, and he is constantly dripping with water, Emily explained. Are you telling me you saw a ghost? Asked Angus. A ghost? What is the ghost? Asked Emily. Angus rolled his eyes, and then grabbed his book and put it onto his lap, and then he rolled his wheelchair away from Emily. Wait! Angus, where are you going? Shouted Emily as she gets up from her chair. I'm sorry, but I do not believe in ghosts, nor do I believe in imaginary friends, said Angus as he rolls his wheelchair away. He is not imaginary! He is real!
Nice acting.
Shouted Emily with anger. After Angus rolls away, Emily sits down at the table with her arms crossed, very angry like. The librarian of the school walks up to her and asks, What is the matter, dear? Are you okay? The librarian. I'm okay, Emily responded. As a response, the librarian uh, walks away after patting her back. After the school closes, the librarian was still in the school putting up the books in the library before she decided to lock up and go home. As she's putting away the books, she starts to hear the sound of water dripping. After putting away the one last book, she looks around, and then the lights inside of the library begin to flicker. Hello? Asked the librarian. Give me a minute, guys. I need to have a drink.
You want me to bring you more water bottles just in case? Alrighty, I'll be back. Continue reading.
Uh, as she slowly walks and looks around, she walks downstairs to the first floor of the school library, looking around. The lights stop flickering. The librarian shrugs her shoulders and begins to back upstairs. But before she could get back upstairs, she sees the little boy in the raincoat. His eyes glow bright red, looking at her, and as a result, she was terrified. She screams and runs as fast as she can out of the library. Then she accidentally ran into the principal, knocking all the work papers out of his hands on the floor. The librarian fell onto the floor, crying and looking very scared. Mrs. D. What?
Deedle, I think it was. I can't remember.
It looks like Diddle, but okay. Because it looks like diet with an L.
Okay.
Whatever. What is the matter with you? Asked the principal. It's the devil. Wow, said the librarian, crying uncontrollably. What nonsense! Said the principal with anger. She goes into the library to see what she was talking about. Principal didn't find anything. That night, Emily was sleeping in her bed, having a nice, calm dream. Emily was dreaming that she was having fun with her friends. The sky was a nice, bright blue, with sunshine and rainbows. As Emily was dancing around in the green grass, suddenly everything in her dream changes. All around her the trees are dead and the sky is covered with rain clouds. Emily sees the boy in the yellow raincoat standing 15 feet away from her, looking out to the blood-red ocean. Out of curiosity, Emily approaches the boy in the yellow raincoat again. However, before Emily could get anywhere close to Dee Dee, she's interrupted by a voice. "You should not approach this crusade," said the voice. Emily looks around to see who said that, but when she looked back where Dee Dee was, she sees instead of a man wearing an orange mask. Yep, we already know this guy. "Who are you, and what are you talking about?" asked Emily. "I am Sudoku, the Angel of Death." "Why do you not understand?" said the Angel of Death. "Because Dee Dee is my friend, and I want to help him," explained Emily. "Your crusade to save this condemned soul will only end in blood.
Condemned. But okay.
Do not make haste to your mission, otherwise you will condemn the infinite world of stars and the worlds to an endless line of suffering. I plead you to please stop," said the Angel of Death. "No, I refuse. I do not care who you are, but Dee Dee is my friend, and I will do whatever it takes to help," Emily responded. "Just know your ignorance will be your undoing," said the Angel of Death. Emily calmly wakes up and she looks out the window, seeing it is morning. Later in the day, in the afternoon, in one of the classrooms, a teacher that goes by the name of Mr. Garrett Mr. Garrett was sitting in his chair grading a test. After writing so much, he decided to lean back in his chair and pick up a stress ball and squeeze it a few times to relax his hands. Unknowingly, he was being watched. Mr. Garrett puts down his stress ball on the table. He begins to feel a slight feeling of dread. Mr. Garrett did not think it was anything significant, so he decided to ignore it. As he stands up from his chair and stretches himself out to relax, he thinks it's just nerves. As his back was turned from the desk, he hears a noise behind him. Mr. Garrett turns around to see an apple in the middle of his desk that wasn't there before. He walks up to the desk and picks at it with picks up the apple, looking confused. In the corner of his eye, he sees somebody sitting in at one of the desks. He turns around and looks, and nothing was there. After hearing a sound of a little boy laughing, Mr. Garrett responded, "Hello?" there anybody there?" Mr. Garrett, with nervousness in his voice. However, there is no response. As a result, he takes the apple with him and leaves the classroom to get some fresh air outside. The next day, Mrs. Hartz sits in the corner in the teacher's lounge where she was getting herself a morning cup of coffee. To get her going. Taking her last sip of coffee, she opens up a door and takes out a glass ashtray, and then lights up a normal cigarette. Ew, those sticks are nasty. After taking a couple of relaxing puffs, she goes to put it out. However, when she does, the glass ashtray goes flying across the room and shatters when it hits the wall. Mrs. Hartz was terrified. She drops her coffee onto the ground, spilling it on her feet. After burning her feet a little bit, she hops around in pain for a moment and then runs out of the room screaming. That same day in the afternoon, Principal Martin was doing some paperwork on his computer in his office. Suddenly he hears a knock at his office door. "Yes, you may come in," said Principal Martin as he takes a sip of his coffee, not paying attention. However, there was no answer. Martin looks at the door and sees nobody there. Thinking it was just his imagination, he goes back to work. However, there was a matter 3 quick taps on the window of the office door. This time Martin looks up at the door and sees a shadow behind the window. He then gets up and opens the door. However, nobody was behind the door. Principal Martin slowly closes the door with a confused look on his face. As he starts to walk back to his desk, he sees a raindrop that completely ignores the physics of gravity and goes from the floor to the ceiling, disappearing out of sight. Principal Martin was so shocked and confused that he stood there for a total of 2 minutes before he decided to leave the office and go outside to think about what it is he just saw. Later that night, all the teachers who have had paranormal experiences themselves gathered outside the school and held a meeting of their own. They decided to hold a meeting in the gymnasium. They grabbed chairs to sit upon and start discussing the matters at hand. However, before anything can start, the conversation amongst the staff members grows very loudly. With their voices were with their voices were echoing throughout the gym. Principal Martin sits ahead of everybody and picks up a microphone and talks into it. "Please, please, please, settle down, everybody. This is supposed to be a calm and collected meeting," said Principal Martin to everybody that was talking. "A calm and orderly meeting? Principal, our school is haunted," shouted Mrs. Hartz with concern in her voice. "I never believed in spirits, but I must ask, what are we supposed to do?" said Mr. B. Well, I don't think there's anything to worry about. And besides, I don't think we should jump to conclusions that our school is haunted," responded Principal Martin with a complete stutter, unsure how to respond to the situation. "Should I jump to conclusions? I saw this thing. This thing has got to be the devil. It had red eyes. It was horrifying," said the librarian with fear in her voice. The principal was unable to respond. The situation was so extreme that he was unable to think logically through the situation. "Listen, Principal Martin, we need to do something about this. We are freaked. If you don't do something now, a lot of us are just gonna quit. None of us wants to work at a school that is haunted," said Mr. Garrett. After Mr. Garrett said that, all the teachers and staff members looked at Mr. Garrett and nodded their heads in agreement and then looked towards the principal for answers.
I feel sorry for the principal right now.
"Look, I understand that you're all scared and confused. There is no reason for us to quit. As far as I know, nobody has been hurt. I think what we all I think all we need to do is take a long deep breath and think about the situation, Principal Martin explained to the audience. All the teachers and staff members looked at the Principal Martin, nodding their heads no with disagreement to what he said. The next day, in the middle of the school day, Emily was reading a book called The Adventures of Sarah and Drake. Really?
Fan
She found
service!
the reading funny and giggled. She was so into the book that she was not paying attention to Angus, who was rolling up in his wheelchair to talk to her. "Emily?" asked Angus to get Emily's attention. As a response, Emily puts down the book and looks at Angus and speaks. "What is it, Angus?" asked Emily sincerely, forgiving him about the argument that they had a few days ago. "Listen, Emily, I don't believe in ghosts, but if you heard there was a staff meeting about some paranormal activity that was going on, I thought as a friend I would help and send information that could be useful for you. However, I'm giving you this information on the grounds that you promised to leave me alone so I can stay out of this. Things you plan on doing, whatever it is," explained Angus as he gives Emily a copy printout of an old newspaper. "Thank you, Angus. Angus, are you are a true friend," Emily responded with a smile on her face. "Yeah, don't mention it," said Angus responded with an attitude as he rolls away from Emily in his wheelchair. Emily looks at the newspaper and at the headline it says, "Boy Goes Missing." Emily reads the newspaper and sees the name of the boy that has gone missing, Milo Braden. Emily reads to herself. All of a sudden, the lights inside the library glow very bright and then the lights blow out. The other kids in the library scream, but Emily immediately sees Dee Dee in front of her. "Dee Dee, what's the matter?" asked Emily. I just remembered something. I want you to come with me," Dee Dee responded to Emily. "Okay," Emily responded with a very cute and okay. Emily responded with a really cute and adorable voice as she puts the newspaper down and follows Dee Dee through the exit outside the school. Eventually, they make their way to their destination. Emily follows Dee Dee to this location where there is a brick-lined bridge that has three giant drain holes in it, where a fast-moving river flows into the ocean. On top of the brick bridge is a rusted metal grate holding the bridge up. On both sides of the bridge there are two brand new light posts. "Where are we, Dee Dee?" asked Emily sincerely, with her cute and adorable voice. "The truth is, Emily, I don't know, but it looks familiar," Dee Dee responded, looking around the area. In front of Dee Dee, he looks to see a steep cliff that goes down at an angle with a very slippery, rocky edge. For some reason, Dee Dee felt attracted to the river. He levitated towards the cliff and goes down. "Dee Dee! I can't follow you down there!" shouted Emily as she runs towards Dee Dee. She stops at the edge of the cliff just in time, barely keeping her balance on the edge, dragging the loose gravel beneath her feet over the edge. She catches herself and watches the small stones drop all the way down to the raging river below. Emily takes a huge sigh of relief from the near fatal trip over the cliff, steps back and wipes the sweat from her forehead and catches her breath. "You were a fool to let him come here," said a familiar voice to Emily. Emily turns around to see the Angel of Death standing behind her. "I told you before, Dee Dee is my friend. I will help him no matter what," said Emily with a pleading heart. "Your actions have doomed us all," explained the Angel of Death. Meanwhile, Dee Dee is levitating at the bottom of the cliff, right above the surface of the raging river. He looks at a reflection of his self, see-through self. In the reflection, he can start to see his memories come back to him. When Dee Dee remembers all the pain and suffering that he went through, he cried tears of blood from his face that he went through. He cried. Okay, yeah, he cried tears of blood and from his uh that his name is Milo and he was murdered, dragged to the lowest reaches of hell. where he was victimized in an unholy, ungodly way, only to live long enough to suffer and agonize the pain and misery of being tortured and raped. Dee Dee wanted to thank Emily for helping him regain his memory, to help him realize how he had become this way, even though it was disturbing, awful, and gross memory. Back on top of the cliff, Emily and the Angel of Death were still talking. "I still do not understand what the problem is," shouted Emily. "Just look for yourself to see the horror that you have unleashed upon us all," said the Angel of Death as he points behind Emily. As a response, she turns around to see Milo. As Emily turns around, the sky begins to rain blood, and Milo screams in pain as his skin begins to vaporize into water, revealing his bony fingers, and the tips of his bony fingers begin to slowly glow a bright
Violet.
violet color. Milo's face also begins to dissolve into water, revealing his skull. The right side of his skull cracks and shadows bursting into the water, like water balloons popping on the ground. Milo's left eye starts to glow a bright red, and then it bursts into turquoise-colored flames, sending the same colored mist around his head in a swirling motion. Milo's yellow raincoat rips and tears by itself spontaneously. Emily screams and cries as she watches the horrifying event unfold. Milo screams like a monster throughout the echoing forest like hills. As Milo transforms into something that neither heaven and hell could destroy, as Milo has transformed into a terrifying monster that will prey on every mortal soul. After that, Emily faints on the ground, seeing something that will traumatize her for years to come. After a bright, loud thunderbolt goes off in the distance of the sky, Milo and the Angel of Death disappear. Alright, that's the end of that chapter.
What did you think about that one?
That was cool. Let me do it.
Please like and subscribe, and this is Akari and Zertuku signing